Artlist.io.
Phone started jumping, what a day. Swear to God I need it now, I can't afford to wait. I just had a fan hit me up from Kuwait. Told him this would happen and we not a minute late. Seen him down bad, now they tryna hate. Same one try to hit me for the raise. Got a meal, now they coming with a blaze.
Music licensing reimagined.
I'm a Don just like the Perrier. It's one time when I'm looking at a face. On the low like I'm pushing up the bass. Told him come down and I'll meet him at a gate. Got a check and I bought myself a place. They get some money and they blow it on bait. I don't flex but I'm pushing all the weight. Told them all I swear I got it's what it takes. Phone started jumping, what a day. Swear to God I need it now, I can't afford to wait.
Hey, good morning. Thank you for being on the eCarrierCheck show. It is Friday. First show of the year, man. I'm super jacked. How are you, Nate?
I know. This is the first time that we have seen each other all year.
I know.
you take some quality time with your family, which I love, but I'm doing great, man. Did you have a good New Year's?
I had a wonderful New Year's. The wife and I got to spend some quality time, had the kids over, played a weird amount of Battleship. Ooh. If you were going to talk strategy of Battleship, I don't know about you, but here's what I was trying to do.
First off, I got to know, is this because you guys watched the Squid Game
Absolutely,
challenge?
it is. Absolutely. So we're watching Squid Games. We binge watched the whole thing. Literally, me and my kids didn't move. This was my favorite. My dad goes, "Hey, what's up, Tire Killer? Haven't seen y'all since last year." I love that.
Long time no see.
That's so good.
Always here.
It's so good.
I know you have your notifications on. He's always here, man.
He's always here. I love that.
You have him on. I love it.
Yeah, get the notifications on. Hit like and subscribe, But so we binge watch. This is my favorite. So we're binge watching Squid Games, and my son goes, "Dad, I just feel like some egg rolls." And I'm like, "Me too." So we sat there. We have those frozen ones you get from Walmart.
Okay.
And they come with a sweet chili sauce.
I love sweet chili sauce, actually.
And so I just dumped them all into the air fryer. Got sweet chili sauce, and here we go. I didn't even care. But I got to tell you, Battleship, though, this was probably
some strategies.
Man, this was it. So, I don't know exactly where you need to line them up at. I'll get better at this. But here's what I did like, okay? And I think this can be said for kind of sales or just in general, but I would intentionally pick my number, okay?
Okay.
And then what I would do is I would look at them and I would say, G7, right? And I would not only pay attention to how he actually said, if I missed or hit, right? But I'd pay attention to how long it took him to tell me. Right?
Gotcha.
So it was really entertaining. Like I almost felt like I could judge if I was close or not by just that,
the way he was
by his tonality and his speed. And so I played this weird game. I'm just messing with my 12-year-old
You don't
son.
even take it easy.
It was rough, man. I was like, oh, he just took a second longer to respond.
Yeah.
It took him longer to to figure out where's that G6 or G7 or G8. It's wonderful. I really enjoyed it.
It's a dog-eat-dog world at your house, I guess. Just like the first.
Man, I didn't even care. We just bring the house. I don't even care. We get this question all the time, Nate, and you say my Kenworth. That's exactly.
Honestly.
That's what it felt like,
Yeah.
man. Like it felt like that exactly. So, but we get this question all the time. What is eCarrierCheck? How can it help me? And so I've got a list of questions here, tons of them, of how it can help you. But I want to ask you these questions specifically. And if you're a dispatcher, if you're a broker, if you're a carrier, how does eCarrierCheck help?
Yeah, I love this question because honestly, the phones have been going crazy this week because I'm getting that same
Everybody's
question.
back.
Everyone's trying to get the right technology in their hands,
Yep.
Or they're coming up with new strategies.
Yep.
So depending on where you're at in your journey, eCarrierCheck is built for that.
Yeah.
You could be day one freight brokering, dispatching, carrying, truck driving, or you could be year 5, right? So no matter where you're at in your journey, we are really accessible for anything. You want to grow your shippers, your customers. You're trying to grow relationships with carriers as a dispatcher.
Yeah.
Some of the people that I talk to have niches.
Yeah.
Right? I see a lot of carriers transitioning into that broker seat. And I had a meeting with a carrier actually the other day, and He's like, I was just trying to transition.
I love
with
that.
his background in reefer and drive-in, I was like, stick to it. You know the talk. Let's walk it, right?
I love that.
So, I mean, in other cases too, there's ways for you to stay organized. You know what I mean? You can throw them in a list. If a carrier drops off on you, what do? Post it. No one calls. There's other ways you can kind of reach out to them just on a quick,
absolutely,
in a quick time. So
yeah, absolutely. I think something that I think is really interesting, and let's talk about carriers for a second, because we have quite a few carriers that are on our site, right? And the question comes in, well, how as a carrier can I get use your site?
Right.
And I'm like, well, I think it's really important this year, especially with those carriers that are, still around, that, we've seen just a mass sinking, no battleship intended here, of carriers, right? And something that I think is really unique is that I think this year, it's all about what are some of the relationships that I can build and maybe just something new, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So if I'm a carrier this year, the strategy has got to be, I need to make some calls to some new brokers and see if they have freight that may make sense. Your first phone call probably isn't going to be productive. But when you call them and say, hey, I got a Kenworth, I got a step deck that's out of Arkansas every friggin' week. What do you got?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I'll give you an example. Tire Killer could probably, and now he's on dedicated stuff already. And I don't know if he works directly with the shippers or directly with brokers.
Right.
But I want to talk about some of the strategy, because let's say Tire Killer's home 3 days a week. He could hop in his truck, maybe a car, it may be more economical, and go see some of those brokers around him, right off eCarrierCheck. eCarrierCheck will show you those brokers that are right around you. If they have a website, if they got a logo, if they've got specialties, and just walk in and say, hey, I'm a carrier. Here's my MC. Have your paperwork with you.
Yep.
Be prepared, right? And just find out what they got.
Right.
Now, some of this can be done in person. Some can be done over the phone.
Right.
But I know the brokers are looking for good carriers. They're wanting dependable carriers. They want to be able to build a relationship where I can text them and say, hey, got this load this week. Does this make sense for you?
Right. And I mean, vice versa too, as a broker, especially if you're new, a lot of carriers are looking into your credit and they're probably like, they're kind of iffy about it.
Right.
So I think the best way to do it is just build those relationships with those carriers in that manner. I mean, it's not easy, right? When people don't want to work with you, you're kind of lost. Like, where do you go? What do you do? And I think with the eCarrierCheck, you can really get weird with phone calls.
Yeah.
I mean, there's new carriers out there that are trying to find a broker just like you.
Exactly.
Exactly. So we show newly added carriers and freight brokers.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a good combination there.
Absolutely. I got my ADHD's taking over for a second. God bless it. I got to tell you, I love insulated cups. It keeps my coffee or my water cold all day.
Yeah.
Okay. But today I don't like it because my hands are cold and I'd like to touch my cup and warm up my hands. I'm not getting that sensation. Feel that real quick. There's no sensation of hot coffee. I just poured this beautiful cup of coffee.
And a nice cup too.
And I'm sorry to interrupt.
You're good.
I friggin' love to be able to put my hand on here and just warm up.
I get it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm not getting that sensation from this. There's no satisfaction. I may go back to a clay cup just for
Just
that
so you can feel
sensation.
that. Okay.
I want to feel something.
We'll just keep one on the side for it.
I know. I want to feel my hands get warmer. I'm just saying. It's a cold day in Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
It is bitter. It's not good.
Yeah. Definitely the windshield were ice over.
I apologize. So carriers, you've got to have a relationship. I apologize. But I think it's really important that you have relationship goals this year as a carrier.
Oh, yeah.
And I think first priority, how do I find direct shippers? Guess what? We can help you find direct shippers as a carrier. We can help you find direct brokers as a carrier is what I like to call them. And then lastly, then rely on the boards.
Let me build on that too.
Yeah, please.
Because if you're a carrier, we want to make sure we're putting you in front of shippers. That's sure pretty tough. Yeah, I agree.
Exactly.
But we want to put you in front of shippers that make sense to you. We're not just giving you these leads that,
right.
If you're a drive-in, we don't want you to be, calling on shipper that's using flatbeds, right?
Exactly.
So that's our goal, and that's what we do. That's our niche, right? We want to help you get in front of shippers that just make sense.
Right.
So we don't just, throw them out and say, call, they don't use your type of equipment.
Right. Yeah, that is
Saves
the nice
so
thing
much
with
time.
Our our broker list is probably better than any other broker list in the country.
Right. No.
I would put ours up against anybody.
Right.
If you guys want to arm wrestle, let me know. I'm open.
Yep.
I mean, but I think that's really important that you find direct shippers, direct brokers, and go.
Right. And that's where we're at with technology nowadays
Yeah.
too. So I think with what we got, it's very powerful. I mean, is a shipper going to want to work with you right away? Maybe not. It could be good timing, maybe
Right.
so, right?
Right.
And you've always said it, and I see Will Jenkins say it all the time. It's about what's going on between now and then.
Yeah.
What are you sending them to build that rapport, that trust?
Yeah.
Maybe educate them
Yeah.
something in this industry, right? So that follow up can.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So as a broker, let's switch over to brokers.
Yeah.
Obviously, we work with a lot of brokers.
Oh, sure.
First and foremost, as a freight broker, if you're coming into this industry right now, or if you're, 10 years in, our vetting tool is free.
Right.
We give you a free vetting tool right on eCarrierCheck.com. You can literally go in, type in any MC or DOT, and guess what? It'll be, it's free. It doesn't matter. You get on eCarrierCheck, put in the MC and DOT. We give you a free risk radar on every carrier that's in the United States and including Mexico. Right. So in Canada. So I think that's the first thing, right? Because you still have that layer of fraudulent double brokering going on, and whether the rates dip enough where they just can't make money, believe me, they're going to find a way to make money on those swings as we go up and down. Alejandro, what's up, brother? How are you, man?
Hey,
it's
what's
good
up,
to
man?
see you. Great day, guys. It's good to have you on. I'm glad you're here.
Yeah. Good to see you.
So there's number one. If you're utilizing load boards to find carriers, which a lot of brokers do, you've got to have a risk radar.
Yeah.
And we've got you.
For sure.
There's number one. Number two is I think you have to have the same relationship mentality as carriers do, is the fact that you need to go out and find direct carriers to work with outside of load boards.
Yes.
My God, it is so nice to have somebody in your back pocket, or have a handful of people in your back pocket that you can text and say, hey, man, I got this load this week. How's that working?
Right. And to add to that, too, I actually had a broker call me and was like, can I use this and not have a load board? And I said, sure, but you have to be proactive.
Yeah, I did it.
Yeah, I was going to say, when your experience with the load board going down for like a couple weeks, right? What were you doing?
I did it. I was making calls and I was talking, building relationships. Some of those carriers that I called that week,
Right.
I don't have as much of a relationship with them, but until I was at the end of my brokerage,
Right.
Career, I loved those guys.
Right.
We knew each other. We were
You're
sending
texting
each other.
each other.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we were sending each other family Christmas cards.
Right.
Love that.
Right.
I should do a Christmas card next year.
I think you should.
I think
Get your
think
calendar,
about that.
Maybe too.
I think about that.
But yeah, you see the importance of that, and the relationship aspect, and it's just such an easier way to have a relationship. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, you're wishing and praying on the load boards. Sometimes it's quiet, right? Just birds chirping.
Yeah, nobody's calling. What do you do?
Right.
You got to be proactive in this game, no matter what you do. In all approaches to life, be proactive.
Yeah.
So there's the direct carriers, and then honestly, I would say we have one of the best leads platform as far as shippers for brokers. I always like to call shippers, not just blindly. You need to know who they are, and based upon the industry. I'll give you an example. If I'm shipping toilet paper, it's probably going in a van. If I'm shipping steel, it's probably going on flatbed, right? But boy, is it really nice to know exactly what you're getting into. Right. If I'm a van guy that's working out of New England, guess what? We're going to show you those shippers that are working in or out of New England that are working with vans, right? So as far as a broker, you got to have those relationship goals. We got to go out and find more shippers this year. And eCarrierCheck's one of the best leads platform there is when it comes to shippers.
I agree.
I
think I'm a big believer in the more information you have, the better you're going to probably be more confident on the call.
Absolutely.
Just to perform better and all around. But and that's what we do.
Yeah.
We provide as much data. We're continuously going to grow that.
Yeah.
So if you guys are new here, definitely just come check us out and see how we can build your company, boost your profits.
Absolutely.
Right? That's what we're here to do.
Absolutely. Last but certainly not least, obviously dispatchers. We have a lot of dispatchers on our platform.
Yeah.
dispatching is a tough gig, right? It's, you're calling carriers. A lot of carriers need you. There are still a role for dispatchers if they're doing it ethically and doing things the proper way, right? But there are people that need your services, right? And from a standpoint of how we can help dispatchers, what would you give me top 3 things that we can do as a software to help dispatchers?
Well, especially, I guess, on your journey, where you're at in your journey, but mainly what I see is, well, if I'm a dispatcher going after a specific type of carrier, we can get you a list of that.
Boy,
you can build yourself a list.
Yep.
You can build yourself a campaign.
Yep.
If you're into texting, we got their cell phone numbers,
right there.
If you're a dispatcher that likes to focus in maybe just specific regions, well, let's go find those carriers that essentially are running in that area.
Yeah.
So there's a couple things right there already. And then another thing, freight brokers.
Yeah.
I think not only you should have carriers, you obviously have your freight brokers.
Bingo, bango, bongo.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I think also too, and I didn't mention this for brokers, but I think the daily monitoring is something that just is really underutilized on our site. But boy, getting that email every day, and that kind of same bleeds into dispatchers. We can show you those new carriers, and try to follow in that suit of that daily monitoring email comes in every day with emails, with phone numbers, and help you maybe get an edge or have one of the first conversations out there as people start to get into the industry.
Right. And I think a good example of why you should have daily monitoring, especially with carriers that you're using weekly, is because I had a broker a couple of weeks ago. He had this load, was going to give to this carrier. On our site, we'll show you a little clock, and this will tell you, hey, their authority's about to go inactive this weekend.
Yeah.
So this guy was like, hey, man, it looks like you're about to go inactive. I can't give you the load. Right. So that's really a good reason why I think daily monitoring is huge. Hey, Michael, what's up, man?
Hey, Michael, I was great for you. Check this holiday season. Thank you, man. We're grateful for you to be on.
Yeah, thank you.
We always really enjoy Michael.
Yeah.
Probably one of the best guys that has just great questions. I'm not sure how, I don't know how many clients Michael has or where he's at in his journey. But son of a gun, does this guy ask good questions? Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm trying not to cuss as much this year. I'm sorry. You know what I mean? If you watch our show, I'm a neighbor. I'm a sailor. Just a hot potato. Just everything's spewing out of me. So I'm glad you're on. I'm grateful for you as well.
Yeah.
So from a dispatcher standpoint, there's a good checklist of things. So I know we help dispatchers. I know we help brokers. We help carriers. We also help factoring companies and insurance companies. And a lot of that is based on, some of that daily monitoring aspects for them specifically. And so we are definitely just this well-rounded site that'll help you grow your business somehow or another.
And to be honest, if you're a creative person, you can get pretty creative on our site as well with finding leads.
Oh yeah.
By keywords.
Oh yeah.
We're just finding leads, carriers by location, region, lanes. So you can get pretty weird on our site. You know what I mean? Which I love.
Absolutely.
Because everyone has their own journey. Everyone has their own story. Let's just help you stay with what you know.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah. And I think, last but certainly not least, eCarrierCheck as a software is really phenomenal. In my opinion, it's a well-rounded software for you. We also have API integrations if you have a TMS that you want us to connect with. For our carrier side, the shipper side is not at that point yet. But here's what I think is really unique is that we have a YouTube channel that allows us to, we're going to get you to the water, whether you're a dispatcher, carrier, broker, we're going to get you to the water. Here's all the information. Our show teaches you what to do and how to use it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about our show. We provide a lot of value. We have the opportunity to talk and meet with a bunch of people. So there's that. How can y'all tell if someone is about to go inactive? That's a great question.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead. Hit that.
Well, our daily monitoring and our risk radars are actually updated every day, and it's just constantly pinging our database. And then if you go and search a carrier, you can see that we have like a little check mark, if you will, and it shows you, they've been active for this long, or they're about to be expired or go inactive, things like that. But it's just constantly pinging every day. So we're kind of pulling that or hitting that, if you will.
Yeah. We pull that information fairly consistently, and we'll see it in there. I should start monitoring you. Yeah. I'm just
And
kidding.
we can monitor quite a bit of things.
We can. There's a lot of monitoring options that are on our site that are awesome for the sake of it. Michael asked an interesting question. My goal is to be the #1 freight broker in the world in 2024. Any tips? Yes. Build relationships every day. Stay consistent every day. There's just something that I've always looked at is before I was into trucking, I always looked at, this is kind of interesting, but there's always somebody in any industry that's elite. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
I used to work at Tiffany's, and there were sales guys that were making close to $1 million a year, right? And those guys were incredible, right? And how did they do it? Guess what? They were consistent with their relationships, and they were always following up with those relationships in some manner or another, right? Every month they would pull their anniversary list, their birthday list that they've built from those relationships, and they became #1, right? That guy became #1. But this is so interesting. I follow this gal on TikTok, which I actually took off TikTok because I was spending way too much time. It's a whole other kettle of fish. I don't even want to get into that. But she is the #1 organ player in the world. And how do you get to that? Well, if you read, The Power of a Habit by Charles Duhigg, right? Which is probably one of the best books ever. I would recommend reading this book. If you get to 10,000 hours of practice, of practicing organ playing, making cold calls, doing digital outreach, whatever it is, at 10,000 hours, you become an expert. Maybe you consume 10,000 hours of sales advice, right? What's interesting is I had a few days off this week, and I started to re-listen to some of my old sales books. And then I started listening to some marketing experts that I really enjoy listening to. Gary Vaynerchuk, he gets a little crazy, right? But it's so interesting to hear what worked yesterday, what's still consistent today, and how do I get to 10,000 hours of consuming educational time? So the question is, how do I become #1? I know a couple freight broker 1099 guys that are making $1 million a year.
Right.
I know 2 of them. $1 million a year. Gosh damn, that's a lot.
Right.
Okay. I know I'm not supposed to cuss. That's a lot. That is imagine making $1 million a year, making $86,000 a month.
That's great.
Yeah. And when I've talked to that guy, and he won't come on the show, but I've talked to him a few different times. And I'm like, what is it about this? How did you get to where you're at? How many cold calls? He has 6 accounts that he makes $1 million a year on. That is insane. But he said, you know what? I just started to perfect my craft, and I started to focus on how do I work on efficiency so that I can book more loads, right? He's got a lot of automation going on, but he focuses on those relationships every single day.
Right.
$1 million a year.
And he's probably, I bet he's made a weird amount of sales calls, so probably just getting over that fear of being told no.
Yeah. His goal is to bring on a new account every month. And some months he gets more than one, some months he doesn't get any, right? But he says that he's always willing to change his approach because what worked last year isn't going to work this year.
Right.
Great question. Wonderful question. Read that book, though. It's a phenomenal book. I'm a big fan of it. By the way, that gal that does the organ playing, and she travels with all these symphonies, and they bring her in, and they're like, "Hey, we got this cool opportunity to have this, organ, and it's 1,000 pipes and all this stuff." She played a couple Snoop Dogg songs.
That's awesome.
On the organ. She is my cup of tea. I'll be honest with you. She's like 30-some, and it was ridiculous to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Her footwork. Have you ever watched somebody that plays the organ?
No, I never have.
I was mesmerized by it. Yeah, we'll pull up your TikTok instead of mine. And I don't even have TikTok, by the way. I took it off my phone. I'm telling you, 10,000 hours, you become number one.
Yeah.
But you got to focus on getting better every day. Constant learning, constant just evaluating.
Right.
That's how you get there. Let's see. Let's talk about, Aludupi Alamati. I'm maybe saying your name wrong. I apologize. Is becoming a freight agent a good step? I'm a big fan of it. There's less risk as far as, you're setting up underneath somebody else's authority. Way less costs, right? Here's the only issue, okay? If you're not a consistent learner, usually freight agents are out on kind of an island.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're not necessarily always, they're not always just, they don't have the best training programs.
Because you're sitting at home kind of thing. You're not really in the office around someone like yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
But freight agents, a phenomenal way of starting. It's a 1099 aspect. Usually it's some kind of split between, the broker and you, and you go. Once you get good, make sure you got a good account.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people kind of jumping into that agent, the freight agent, aspect of it. And then I think, down the road, they're always talking about opening up their own. So, So I do hear a lot of that.
Yeah. I guess what I'm asking is what information dictates that? It's primarily insurance, Tire Killer. So let's say I see a carrier that is pending revocation or something to that extent. Normally we'll see, hey, Tire Killer's insurance expires at the end of January. He's got about 30 days to make sure this happens.
Right. That's
usually what it is, just to give you that understanding. So we're doing kind of a pre-check and going, hey, this guy hasn't updated his insurance yet. Is that going to happen or not? Just so you know. Michael, I know you all answered this the other night, but I'm going to ask you again since y'all are on the live. I got hired as a 1099 with a small brokerage. I do have experience in car sales. I was very successful. Yeah, I love this. You know what I mean? If you're willing to grind out car sales, it's one of the harder, besides being a door-to-door guy.
Yeah.
We've had a guest on our show named Gunner. Phenomenal.
Door-to-door right there.
Door-to-door insurance guy. There's some scrappiness right there. And I think what's unique about him is he's got probably one of the more interesting wives. He's got a couple kids. Mm-hmm. He just wants a better life for himself, though, right? He's trying to change his stars. I love that.
Yep.
I love that. New freight brokers are on here. You need to purchase eCarrierCheck because you will be spending too much time doing non-sales related things. You need to call the majority of the day. eCarrier's it.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I agree.
We're just going to drop the mic right there.
You did, right?
And he didn't even cuss. I love that. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
He said to start getting a list first. So I did all my homework, figured it out how to get 200 shippers. I'm going to start calling today. He said, once I solidify an agreement with shippers, then too. Got it. Yeah, I'm a big fan of just this year is going to be one of those years, especially as a freight broker. It's going to be a challenging year. I'm not going to lie. But I am a big believer in splitting your time between, it used to be emails. You could still do emails, but I just don't know if they're effective. I actually heard a shipping manager the other day say that he asked his company to not have an email address. They were like, well, how are we going to get a hold of you? He's like, well, pick up the phone.
Right.
I thought it was kind of funny. He's like, send me a memo. I'm like, well, whatever.
Michael, this is another good question. Yeah, people do get burnt out. From the stories I've heard, it's essentially what I've witnessed. People block out times to make calls.
Yeah.
Because in the morning, you're probably answering emails, trying to figure out what your day, looking at your pipeline, right? Yeah. But essentially, they're calling every day. I mean, if you don't have a customer, you're calling every freaking day. Making at least 50. There's some brokerages I've heard that you have to hit a maximum of 50 calls. Yeah. Now, good calls.
Yeah.
Not just calling and getting a voicemail. Like, make some good calls.
Yeah.
Talk to someone.
Yeah.
Get a name. That's a win.
That is a win.
But I would say call every day, all week.
I agree. I would. You'll get to a point that there's this balance thing that happens. Those old. Remember those old. I used to go to this grocery store and it had a weight thing so you could see how much your bananas were. So you'd put the bananas in. I remember this as a kid. You put the bananas in on this side, and then this side you had to put in the weight. Mm-hmm. It was incredible. They didn't have those little. This was an old grocery store. Yeah. They didn't have the damn weights on the.
Right.
There I go again, cussing. But they didn't have those weight things for the bananas, right?
Yeah.
And so, oh my gosh, it was incredible. Like, I always found it funny that you were putting 1 pound, 2 pounds into this friggin' thing, and your bananas would go up. And but yeah, absolutely. What do we got? Michael Angel. I almost got confused because we have another
I know. I
Michael.
was like,
That was
good
kind of fun.
question.
Start posting on load boards. My wonder is this: what about relationships with carriers? Do I think he's watching out for my own interest to help me get started? Would still like another opinion.
That's a really good question.
Start posting on load boards. My wonder is this: what about building relationships with carriers? I do think he's watching out for my own interest to help me get started. Would like another opinion. And then maybe I'm not understanding.
Well,
this
I think
very
if I'm reading it right, I think if a carrier wants to have that relationship with you, you both be looking after each other's interests.
well.
But like I said, I could be reading this wrong too. But essentially, if you build the relationships with the carriers, you're hoping that you guys are both watching after each other.
Yeah.
That way, you're not having to post on the load board each time. Essentially, what Jerry likes to do, or in his old days, I don't mean to say old days, but
Thank you.
back in the day was relationships first and load boards second,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
we didn't answer that. It's kind of
Something that I did, I got to tell you, this is something, Michael. Here's a layer that I think is really interesting that I gained. You talk about, well, how do you gain confidence, all right? And it's doing things over and over again until you get to a point where it's just right there, right?
Yeah.
I gained my conversations by having conversations with carriers, and then I mimicked what they would say when I was talking to shippers.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I
give me an example.
got my master's degree. I'll give you an example. I got my master's degree in trucking by having 1,000 conversations with carriers. You knew everything that was wrong. You knew everything that worked. You knew that region well, right? You talk to some of those carriers that were out like in like northern Nevada, and they're like, I hate going to California. I got to go over the pass.
Okay.
So I'm talking to shippers in northern Nevada, and I'm like, hey, I know the pass is tough. How do you handle when we can't get across? And I would start to mimic some of those conversations, and I'd be like, hey, the pass closes up at least 6 times a month during February and 10 times open March. What do you like to hear as far as communication from your broker when the pass is closed? And all of a sudden that shipper's like, well, this guy knows.
He knows his region.
Yeah, just mimicked it.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same thing with like Texas. I can give you an example. I'd call these Texas carriers constantly, right? And I would just call carriers. When I got burnt out of calling shippers and being told no, guess who's going to pick up the phone? A friggin' carrier is. I love carriers. They will give you God, they are the heartbeat of this industry, and they will give you so much information if you give them potentially some value that you're gonna help them try to grow.
Right.
Everybody's got a paycheck. Everybody's got a mortgage. Everybody needs help to grow. Right? Carriers usually will pick up the phone most of the time. There's some challenges, but for the most part, if you're picking up the phone and calling them, and I always had a set of questions that I said to every single carrier. Hey man, how's life? What's working right now? What's not? How's your equipment? Is it old? Is it aged? Is it new? What do you like about shippers? Right? They'll always tell you that close times are too early.
That's fair.
They close at 2:00. They suck. So take advantage of. This is why I love our site. Is a relationship first. Take advantage of. Your cold calls are important. You've got to grow. Nothing happens till something's sold. You've got to remember shippers are paying your bills. But my God, your master's degree. Yeah, that's a fair statement too. You're just driving down the road. But you got to remember, those carriers are going to give you a master's degree in trucking.
This is an interesting question.
Who would win in a freight broker sales contest? The person who called the most or the most skilled? That is a wonderful question. In my opinion, it's a skilled guy. There's a couple guys that we work with that are fairly new that make just a boat of calls. And, usually what I see when it comes to trends is those guys that are experienced, they can make 10 calls and get at least a potential meeting. They can get a potential quote opportunity, right? The guys that are making just a boatload of calls, they may make 50. They just aren't saying it right or may not be relatable. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So essentially, after each call, you should kind of reflect on what was said.
Yeah.
Maybe say it differently, or maybe come from another angle.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
can see where the skill comes into play.
I think sales calls are more conversational. You know what I mean? And you're trying to build a relationship with the guy that's getting 100 phone calls. I want to be the relatable guy that says, hey, my skill, my way doesn't work all the time. This is just what worked for me, right? You know, there's a lot of other ways. I've seen some brokers that are incredibly dull on a phone, but they know when to, they know the kill shot.
Right.
They know when to go for the jugular.
Yep.
They can hear it. They see it. They feel it. So good question, though. I love this. I think you just got to continue to build that skill set, and the skill set comes from those conversations with carriers and doing those calls. All right, let's keep cooking. So when you cold call a carrier, can you give some scenarios of what you'd say, ask, how do you introduce yourself? And if you'd use load boards and while starting out, be ideal to build a rapport with them. Yeah. So in my mind, what are you going to say is you need no matter what you do, you need to always be in the position of what do they need? What works for them? Always think of them first. How do you add value to them? And just say, hey, and I don't know where you're at, Michael, if you're new, I think he's probably new is what I'm gathering. But if you're new and you're calling carriers, just say, and just be visible. Just say, hey, I'm just kind of getting going. Here's my situation, but I'd love to know more about you as a carrier. What works? Where do you get your loads? What drives you nuts? And just have an open conversation, but just make it all about them. I got to tell you, I sat, this was kind of interesting. I went to the movie theater way too early the other day, and I don't want to talk about that. But I misread the time.
Yep.
So I had some extra time on my hands.
Did you go walk the mall?
I'm not talking about that. But I sat down, and this old guy was right there.
Okay.
And I don't know if he noticed, but by the end of that conversation in 45 minutes, he had no idea who I was. He didn't know my name. He didn't know anything about me. But in 45 minutes, I found out everything about his family. I found out everything that he loved about Christmas. I found out everything that he loved to do physically, active-wise. He was an older guy. I found out everything that kind of motivated him in life. In 45 minutes, I was able to have that conversation. And I'll be honest with you, he probably walked away going, oh, that was a great conversation.
Right.
And about 45 minutes after that, he was like, I don't even know that guy's name. Right? That's the conversation you need to have with carriers.
I love that. Yeah.
You need to go out and understand them and what ticks. Ask them open-ended questions about, tell me about your equipment. Tire Killer is probably more, he is so proud of his step deck. He's so proud of his equipment, his truck, and what he does and how he does it and how he keeps it clean and his regiment for, making sure that, he saves money for fuel this month, or he's proactive in knowing his costs. If you ask carriers, hey, do you know your costs?
Right.
Some may not.
Right.
How do I help you get there?
Exactly.
Right. Add value to them first. I promise you that value will come back twofold.
I love it. Yeah, for sure. And Michael, Angel, to answer your question to that, yeah, I'm going to flex eCarrierCheck. Yeah, we are that platform for you to find carriers. We can, before you even contact a carrier, you'll know his name. You'll know his partner, whoever else is with them, but you'll know their equipment they have. You'll even get a taste of how long they've been in this industry.
Yep.
There's so much, too, that we provide you to help you start that conversation where Jared's kind of going with that. But, yeah, it's there. You even got your leads there as well. So definitely check us out. I'd love to give you a demo. If you just hit me up.
Yeah, check out the demo. It's wonderful. Is this the worst cold calling market you've ever seen? Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've heard.
It's really congested. I think we still have some time here where it's going to be continued to be congested in the interstate. I think this is why it's important that you spend, I used to do this 50-50 split between calling and emailing. Now what I would do is I would do maybe a 50-50 split with calling, building your brand, and doing digital outreach. I think now more than ever, people want to hear your story. People want to know about you. People want to get on LinkedIn. It's the most professional platform, and they want to be able to look you up.
Yep.
So get on there, start building a brand, post every day, share a Freight Waves every day, share your story every day, right? Hey, here's what's working for me. What do you guys think? You don't have to be an expert. You just have to say, this is what works for me. Is it working for anyone else? Here's what's not working for me. Is this working for anyone else? And have a little bit of sense of humor, because we're all in the same boat. Worst cold calling market? Absolutely. But I think you got to always remember, when it's in the situation, there's always opportunity. You just have to find it.
Yep.
And it may just be a little bit harder.
Yep.
Right? Just my thoughts.
Well said.
Just my thoughts.
Michael Angel, if you go to eCarrierCheck.com, you can sign up for a demo there. And then, if I'll see you come across my computer, and I'll reach out to you. And if we need to set up like a private demo, we can do that as well.
Yeah.
But just go to eCarrierCheck.com, sign up for a demo, or you can email our customer support, and we'll get you taken care of.
Yeah. Honestly, our story is awesome. We are fully bootstrapped. We've taken no friggin' money. We have a small team, and man, are we looking to try to punch above our weight. We have incredible programmers that are awesome to friggin', they're just incredible. Nate is incredible. He just handles all of our client acquisition. You're a badass. You really are incredible. You provide more value than most people that I've ever met. If you call a lot of software companies, they just don't have that personal touch, and you bring that. So cheers to you.
I appreciate that.
I told you I'm going to try to quit cussing. There's 3 cuss words on today's show. I'm sorry, you two.
As I drink, it's a bad habit.
It's
There's no Miller Lite.
I love it. I love it. I love all the questions though today. We're definitely here to help you grow. Our number one goal is to help people connect with the people that are going to change their lives. And we have a platform to do that. And we'd love to have you on. So it's been a fun show today. We're going to kick off. Any questions, support at eCarrierCheck.com. Our whole team is badass. Thank you for being on. I'm not sure who that is, but thank you for being on.
I just closed out a link there.
It doesn't show us, but thank you for that. We appreciate that. We think you're a badass as well. Okay, there's number 4. There it is.
Get off
I know. What's going on? Happy Friday, guys.